Hello everyone, my name is Deepak and I'm a tax code advisor. Let's take a look at this question from a client who is asking, hey, I had already negotiated the car price and the dealer added extra 12.99 in a dock fees. Is this normal? So obviously they went into some car dealership and they wanted to purchase a new car or maybe even a used car, and they must have asked them to get some sort of loan on the car. And once they got everything all done, the dealership must have came up and they looked at the paperwork like, oh my god, the price is way more than what we had agreed upon. Well, first of all, congratulations to you for even noticing it. Most people don't even pay attention to it. They kind of see the car price, and then they everything else they kind of see the cost of doing business. But a financial savvy person will pay attention to minor details. Even taxes, you might have noticed that sometimes depending upon which zip code you live in, taxes might be different. So if you are money efficient, that's what I like to call. That means you're paying attention to every dollar that is coming in and out of your pocket. You're paying attention to these silly fees. So today we're going to answer this question and see if there's any way we can avoid these fees. Is there anything else we can do? Can we perhaps negotiate it with the dealership or structure the transaction in another way that can have a better outcome? So we're going to answer all of those questions today. If you remember, I did a video earlier where I was talking about whether it's a good idea to buy a car with cash or finance. I briefly mentioned too that whenever you have some sort of loan involved, there's always some paperwork, and people can use that paperwork to charge you extra fees. So doc fees typically stands for documentation fees, although dealerships can use whatever the name they want, right? Sometimes they might call it a processing fees, sometimes they might call it administration fees, sometimes they might give it a different name, maybe blame it on their finance department or blame it on interest rates, or sometimes I even see people blaming it on the government, that it's like required by government, which is not true. It's not like some sort of mandatory fee. It's not like a sales tax or anything like that that you have to pay. But the key thing is, don't get confused when you go from dealership to dealership, because different dealerships will say a different word. But essentially what they're saying is that, look, we're going to charge you fees for doing this paperwork. What kind of paperwork? Well, they're applying for the loan, they're doing a title transfer for you, they're registering the car, and who knows what. They can come up with a lot of different reasons why they should be able to charge you that fees. Now, doc fees originally originated in 1960s when dealerships separated their finance department and their insurance department. So it used to be kind of like one. Now they wanted to track profits from each part of their business, which is actually not a bad strategy. So if you're a small business owner, and you're not doing this already, then you should, because most small business owners might have a multiple segment of businesses. And it is a good idea to separate them out so you can track what kind of revenue each segment is bringing in. For example, I was recently talking to a client who had 8 restaurants. And when I looked at their financial statements, he asked me, Deepak, what will have the biggest impact on my business? And after analyzing everything, I said, look, the biggest impact will be that you close down the other 7 restaurants, only keep one open. You don't need the other 7. He's like, why not? They're bringing you a lot of business. I'm like, yes, they're bringing you a lot of business, but they're not bringing you profit. Most of your profit is only coming from one branch. So 90% of the profit is coming from one branch, but these other 7 branches are keeping you busy. You have to travel there, you have to serve the customers, you have to manage it. So if you get rid of all these other 7 branches and just focus on that one branch, imagine what will that do to your business. So, when insurance, when these dealerships separate their departments, it's actually not a bad idea. But is that in your favor? Can they actually charge you that fees? Well, I'll run an example. Let's say, imagine a local dealership charges you $1,000 and they sell 500 cars a month. Well, that's a $500,000 revenue in just processing paperwork. Now, you tell me, how many people do they really need to process that paperwork? Is that person really costing them $500,000? Probably not. Most of it is pure profit. It goes in their pocket, so they love it. So, what can we do about this? Well, if you're going to ask to get rid of that fees, I mean, you're really asking them to get rid of their profit. And that's why when we do negotiation with the dealership, we always first start with the price of the car, and then we get the finance involved. We figure out the cost with the finance, cost without the finance, and then we ask for all the fees associated in the entire transaction. We have all the data, and only then we can move forward with making a good offer. Because see, at the end of the day, how is this dealership working? They're thinking, how much money am I going to make from which sections? And they're calculating all their profit. And the profit is, hey, $500 in cleaning, $500 in dock fees, $500 in financing, $500 in insurance, $5,000 in the sale of a car. They all add all that up and they get a net profit. So that's what they are paying attention to. And what we're paying attention to is just one cost, which is wrong. We need to think just like dealership, and we need to be able to separate that transaction out into pieces. I recommend that my clients do that for all kind of loans, whether you're investing in some sort of private lending, maybe you are buying a home, maybe a mortgage, maybe you're taking a home equity line of credit, or in this case, you're taking a loan on your car. So in preparation for this video, I was just curious what kind of fees people are charging. Now, I didn't really go to each DMV or each dealership in different area and ask them specifically, but I collected this information online. So don't rely on it. It'd probably be a best idea that you check with your, local dealership to kind of find out what kind of dock fees they're charging. But here are some numbers. For example, in Florida, dock fees in Florida are not capped by the state law. So they can charge whatever they want to charge. And they tend to be among the highest in the US, typically ranging around $1,000 to $1,300. Some dealerships might charge even higher fees depending on the location. So pay attention, especially if you're in Florida. State of Texas, one of the best states in the country. I love this state. I also love California as well, by the way. But when it comes down to taxation and keeping the cost of living low, I think Texas is one of the best states. Texas has a state cap of $150 for documentation fees. So they understand that as a business owner, you do need to pay your employees, and they feel that with 150 bucks, you should be able to pay your employees. So that should cover that cost. However, people were not happy with that because of inflation, and every all the fees are going high, and honestly speaking, it's also becoming a little bit hard to find employees and whatnot. So even in state of Texas, I think they changed it, and my research showed that the current number is around 225, but still reasonable, not as bad as 1,300 bucks or so. Iowa, the dock fees in Iowa is capped at $180, making it one of the most affordable state in terms of these charges. I mean, 180 bucks still, but again, more than likely with inflation and everything, they're going to change it as well. North Carolina and Virginia, in these states, dock fees are generally higher. So keep that in mind. With North Carolina averaging around 900 bucks and Virginia having dock fees ranging between 250 to 850. Now, one thing about California, though, is California is also heavily regulated state. So they don't really allow you to make major changes that impact a lot of people. For example, changes to insurance. Similarly, in California, the dock fees is capped by the state law. As of 2024, according to my research, the maximum dealership can charge for the documentation fees is $85. This is obviously lower than many states, reflecting California's consumer protection regulations. So those of you guys who are in California and you're claiming about housing prices or the taxes there and all the other problems that California has to deal with, one of the cool thing is when it comes down to consumer protection, you have some more benefits. For example, medical is awesome in California, and some of the benefits, the state benefits that you get in California are awesome as well. But I understand your concern, so don't worry about that. Now, you might be wondering, well, does dealership even need to charge these fees? Well, no, it's their choice. They can choose to charge it or they can not choose to charge it. What you want to find out is which state you are in, and is it a regulated fees, and what's the maximum they can potentially charge. You can also go talk to different dealerships and ask them specifically how much you charge for a dock fee, so you kind of have an idea. It is possible that you might go to three different dealerships in your local market, and one might say, hey, I'm going to charge you 1,000 bucks. Another one might say, I'll charge you 500 bucks. Another might say 300 bucks, depending upon obviously your state regulations as well. So keep that in mind. Now, in some states, you can even charge sales tax on top of that fees. So, which is extra revenue for the state. So not just that the dealer is screwing us, in some cases, state is partnering up with them as well. So if you think about it, dealership have full-time employees, just like a paper clerk, you can call them. They're responsible for submitting paperwork to DMV, processing registrations, preparing your title transfers. And you would think that this fees will directly go to these people, kind of like a tip. So when you go to a restaurant, you give a tip because you think that's money is going directly to that employee. But that is not the case. See, dock fees do not directly pay these employees, but they contribute to dealer overhead. So they're saying, hey, look, and I can understand that too, because what they're saying is, look, we have these employees, and yes, we are paying them X amount of dollars, but they're coming to our office. We have to pay rent. We have to pay for AC. So there's a cost of operating that, uh, to hosting that employee to provide that services. So they keep part of that for themselves as well. So don't think like all of that money is going to the employees as well. Um, Okay, how can you deal with this problem? What are some of the options available to you? So, number one, don't wait until you are in their office to discover the dock fees. I'm glad you're watching this video today, because now that you know, next time you go into a dealership and you're trying to buy the car, you will know exactly what to ask. Check upfront. Ask them what is out the door price, like I said, with all the fees involved. And ask them to itemize all those fees. Don't let them just give you one bundle price, because when they give you just one price, it becomes super hard to figure out if that price even makes sense or not. Sometimes you might want to open up that paperwork and take a look at each line item, and don't be surprised if you see some double charges. For example, they might put a doc fees, they might put a processing fees, and they might put administrative fees and stuff like that. If you see multiple charges, you say, look, this is just pure fraud. I don't agree with it. I'm not willing to pay for that. And they will go back, and most of the time they will remove those charges. Or if you're not happy with them, you simply walk out of the dealership and you go to a different dealership. Dealers want to close the deal. They want your sale. So dealers will often negotiate with you. So use this as a leverage. Talk to them that, hey, I want this price, and stick with that price, and use your regular negotiation skills to kind of point out all the things that are wrong with the deal. So keep that in mind. You can always use competition to your advantage. You might say, "Hey, look, I was at the other dealership. They don't charge this stock fees, but you better know that." So if you don't know the answer, maybe that dealership knows that, and he might say, "Hey, that's not the case. They also charge it." So if you call around and just ask the specific question that, "Hey, are the other dealerships, are they charging that fees or not?" And when you go into a dealership and you're able to say that exactly, then more than likely they're going to negotiate with you. You need to be firm. Don't be willing to, give up and say, hey, it's only a couple $100, and that's what they're going to make. That it's only a couple $100, but a couple $100 can make a big difference. As a buyer, it is your responsibility to check every single line item on that paperwork they give you, what fees they are charging. Now, I understand for some of you guys, that can be just too much. You might be saying, wait a minute, Deepak, I'm not a finance guy. I can't see this. I cannot understand it and all that. Well, then get the estimate and hire a finance guy. I'm sure there's somebody locally you can trust. You can always definitely reach out to us. You can set up a consultation appointment, and we will jump on a Zoom call, and we'll take a look at that for you. Or maybe you have a friend who is really good with this, or someone you can trust. They can look at it. But the point is, just don't give up. I think there is a way for you to make it work, but ignoring it is not a solution. Now, I don't know if you guys have purchased a car and ever paid attention to dock fees. So if you first of all tell me in the comments that, have you ever noticed dock fees? And if you have, how much dock fees did you pay during your last purchase? I'm sure you remember your sales tax. I'm sure you remember the price of your car, but more than likely you probably don't remember the dock fees, because most of us didn't pay attention to that. Second thing, tell me, how do you negotiate with a dealership? What are some of your favorite techniques? What works? What doesn't work? And if you have any more questions, concerns, you want to, talk a little bit more about that, then please definitely share those comments in here as well. And keep sending me your questions. I love getting your questions. I want to answer them. They keep me busy. So thank you so much for doing that. If there's anything I can do to help, don't hesitate to reach out. Just go to taxcodeadvisors.com and set up an appointment with me. Thank you.